I realized I have this critical inner parent now. Back then, I didn't know what it was. So I wanted to numb myself. And how do you numb yourself? Most people numb themselves with food, alcohol, drugs, binge watching TV, social media, poor relationships, promiscuity, cheating, all that stuff. When I see someone doing that, Dave, that's someone trying to fill a hole. That hole probably came from childhood. And it didn't have to be a childhood that the trauma was obvious. Like mine was obvious, and I was still unconscious of it because my brother, sister, and I were like, well, yeah, we had a weird childhood, but everyone does. It's okay. My brother, I remember him just saying, everyone's got something in their childhood, but ours wasn't any worse than anyone else's.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the community. I'm so excited for today's conversation. I'm going to be sharing with you a friend of mine, someone I've known for over 30, maybe 35 years, if I will. Peter Kofitsas is someone that I went to high school with, but he's a physical therapist, nutritionist, speaker, author, health and life coach, and a former D1 scholarship athlete for football. Peter's a media expert. He's appeared on shows on ABC, Fox, MSN, TLC, and in the fitness, and he's been in Fitness Magazine. He's authored 3 books, including his upcoming memoir, Waking the Fire. Peter, thanks for being here today.
Oh, my pleasure, man. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, this is funny. So we were just kind of talking off camera, but I've known you from high school. You're a year ahead of me, and I played football for a bunch of years, banged my head around. If you can't tell, I'm 5'9", and you can't tell. Pete, what are you, like 6'4", 6'5"?
6'4", maybe 6'4", a little shorter now.
You know, it's funny. My son's 6'4". I don't know how that happened.
That's awesome, man.
So Pete walks on. I'm a junior. Pete played basketball, right? Shows up on the team in his senior year and leaves with a Division I scholarship to Rutgers to play football. And I was like, man, like, couldn't happen to a better guy, right? But like, couldn't be more frustrated. Like, how'd that happen, right? Only to go on and become an incredible physical therapist. You got your master's in nutrition. Turn my TV on. I'm halfway through my practice, and I look on the TV, and there's Pete, killing it, just talking the talk and sharing nutrition and sharing lifestyle. I've seen your things with Fox, and he's done some incredible things, and couldn't happen to a better person. When I say that, I don't know anybody that doesn't say you're just one of the nicest guys. So I want people to know that. I want them to know what your heart is. At 6'5", I don't. Your heart's bigger than your body, right? And I love how you help people and your intention. So here we are, 30 years later. Could you fill in the gaps from going through school and what got you to here? And we'll talk more about how you're working with people today.
Yeah, Dave, thanks so much for that. It's really nice to hear. It makes me emotional when someone says kind words about me and they're authentic. I've had compliments my whole life. My ex-mother-in-law says I'm pleasant looking. That's her way of saying that I'm handsome. But when I get an authentic compliment like that, it really does affect me. And it's nice to know that people that I knew in high school that thought that I was a nice guy, that I was kind, that I was friendly, that I was always smiling, because I didn't always feel like that. I want to share a little bit about my background. I also want to talk about that scholarship because it's something I haven't thought about, Dave, for almost 30 years until a reunion came up for college football. So I played freshman year of football, and I think the 4th game I went out for a pass, caught the ball, fell, and broke my wrist. Didn't play again until my senior year because my father, who was still alive at the time, threatened to kill me if I played. Like literally, I believe the guy would have killed me. He was a sick man, unfortunately, and that's part of what my memoir is about. But my father died when I was 16, committed suicide when I was in high school in a tragic way. That's a lot of what the memoir is about. And my senior year, my buddies said, "Hey, Pete, your dad's dead. Play football. It's the last time you'll ever play with us. You'll regret it for the rest of your life." So I was like, what the hell? I'm going to play. I told my mom, and she didn't know what football is. She's a Greek immigrant. And I'm like, "Mom, I'm going to go play football." And she's like, "Didn't you hurt yourself last time you played?" I was like, "Yeah, that was a long time ago. Don't worry about it." So I played and I got a scholarship, which, Dave, I didn't watch sports. I always loved to play sports. I didn't watch any games on football. I wasn't that kind of a kid. We were out on the playground in those days, right? We were out on the playground and played from sun up to sundown. And I started to get offers of scholarships. And I actually and my daughter, who is 6 feet tall, and was into volleyball for a while and wanted to get a scholarship. She's like, Dad, you got scholarships to Ohio State, Penn State, Tennessee, and a bunch of other schools, and you chose Rutgers? That's exactly how she says it. And the reason I chose Rutgers was I asked my mom, a Greek immigrant, no education, Mom, where should I go to school? She goes, go to the nearest school that's the best academics. And that was Rutgers. And that's how I ended up at Rutgers. So that's part of that. Home. Yeah.
So my kids we just took college tours this weekend. We went down to South Carolina, and I almost could relate to what your mom is saying.
Don't go so far away.
Yeah.
So your oldest is now just going to start college, you're saying?
The junior, yeah. So he'll be a senior next year. Yeah. So it's that time.
I hear you, brother. I have two daughters in college. My son is 14, and it was tough, man. And the first time I walked away, and like, that's it. Like, you're gone, you leave, and you leave them there alone. And how are they going to take care of themselves? Because you've been taking care of them for all these years, but somehow they do it. Mm-hmm. They adapt. So then, it's kind of a long story, but I quit my scholarship at Rutgers. I was really depressed. Stuff that I never worked through with my father's death and my upbringing. There was a lot of childhood trauma that I think, like a lot of people, Dave, I just pretended didn't happen. My brother and sister are also high achievers. They have advanced degrees. My brother's an architect. My sister happens to be a physical therapist too, but she's brilliant. She treats dogs. And it's how smart is she? She doesn't have to deal with humans.
Yeah, a lot less issues with, the dogs are a lot nicer to you.
They sure are, man. They love you unconditionally. Yeah. It's out of pocket, so it's nice. There's no insurance. But anyway, I went through a tough time, and I kind of had a metamorphosis or an enlightenment, I guess. And I started reading, and when I played at Rutgers, I got really fat. Like, I was muscular, but I was also fat. Never took steroids or anything like that. And I was 65 pounds heavier than I am now. And I left Rutgers, and my mom said, you could leave your scholarship. Just promise me you're going to go to school. So I took community college classes, and did well because I flunked all my classes at Rutgers because I just walked away from the school. I just basically just left campus. That was it. I was just at a point in my life where it was just so difficult. I didn't know what was going on, really, that I just had to get the hell out of there. So I took some community college classes, did pretty well, transferred to a 4-year school, got my undergraduate degree, graduated with honors, and then went right into a master's of science in physical therapy. Now, I went into nutrition and physical therapy because I wanted to be healthier. I've always felt natural. I never smoked. My daughter thinks this is crazy too. She doesn't believe me, but I've never smoked a cigarette. I've never done a drug. I've never smoked pot. Just for me, it was just something I never wanted to do. I've never done any illegal drugs. I drink alcohol in moderation, and that's about it. Mm-hmm. So I always felt natural, but I hated how I looked and felt. So I got a nutrition degree to learn how to eat. And then I didn't want to become a doctor. So I thought physical therapy was cool because I could learn all about the body and how to exercise. So I really did those things for myself. Mm-hmm. And I learned so much, and it was awesome. And through the process, I got into the best shape of my life, in better shape than when I played Division I football, which is ironic, I think. And then I slowly started to, I got my nutrition degree. I got my physical therapy degree. I started working as a physical therapist, and I'm working for this chiropractor who I love chiropractors. I've worked with chiropractors right from the beginning, Dave. For some reason, and there was an affinity to them. And right from the beginning of my career, for the past 23 years, I've always worked with a chiropractor in a multidisciplinary center. I just think that makes the most sense. Right. Treating people holistically. I know you get that. So I'm working for this chiropractor, and one of our patients was the nurse manager from a local UPS, like a big headquarters of theirs. She came in and said to him, hey, can one of you guys do like a back pain seminar at lunchtime, like a lunch and learn? And my boss is like, absolutely. So she leaves, and he turns to me, he goes, Peter, you're going to do it. I go, me? Why? He goes, I'm terrified of public speaking. Well, so was I at the time, Dave. I failed my first 2 public speaking classes at Rutgers because I refused to speak. And when I spoke, it was so bad. I'm not exaggerating. I'll show you my transcripts. I failed those first 2 classes, and then I had to take public speaking to eventually graduate, or to get to from community college to a 4-year program. I had to take public speaking, and I took it at a college over the summer. And I just got lucky. There was this professor who just seemed to really like me. It was summer. I had a tan, I had a tank top, and I think just he was a nice guy. He just passed me, kind of thing. So I was terrified of public speaking, and it came from the type of childhood that I had. But I told my boss, okay, I'll do that lunch and learn, because I love physical therapy. I love knowing about the body and teaching people. I'm sure you can relate to this, teaching people about how to take care of their bodies, which is really a gift. So I go to UPS at this lunch and learn, and it was terrible. It was terrible, except for a couple of seconds where I connected to someone in the audience, where I said something and I saw their body language, I saw their face light up, and I was hooked, man. And I wanted to get more of that. And so I refined my speaking. I studied professional speakers. I studied Bill Clinton, regardless of the politics. I studied Elvis Presley and his charisma. And I studied just great speakers and just watched them, how they spoke. And slowly I started to emulate what they were doing, picked up my own mannerisms. And the more I did it, the better I got. And that was kind of it's something I never thought I would do in a million years. Now, when I was a kid, I had something called a salvation fantasy. And then I've only come to realize that now over the past 4 years, as I've done a lot of trauma work with a therapist, a 12-step program. I wasn't addicted to drugs, but I was addicted to negative thinking and a lot of the baggage that comes with being raised in a dysfunctional and addicted home. So I've been able to look at, I forgot my train of thought. I forgot where I was going with that.
What I'm hearing you say, right? So I love it. And I can relate to it, right? So it's like you wanted to change your life. So the material that you see is your physical body. How could I make myself feel better, be healthy? If I could just be healthy and look great or feel great, that will change what's going on up here. But we know that's not true. But we have to go through the process to find out that it's not true. Although it is a part of it. Right? It's a piece of it. Like everybody sees the outside, but it's an inside out deal, right? So public speaking, low self-esteem, right? Getting in front of people, how to communicate your voice. Like I remember my first class in public speaking, and then the teacher would walk around and we were supposed to all be saying the same thing at the same time. I know for a fact what was coming out of my mouth was literally, that was it. That was the last day of the weekend. And that is about as far as I got, right? But I knew that it was something like a sport, that if I got better at it, if I could speak in front of a bunch of people, it made my one-on-one conversation better. So I'm tracking your evolution, physical, mental, right? Emotional thing. So I'm sure that's where you're at. So go ahead.
Yeah, brother, you're so right about that. Like the path that I took. So I had this salvation fantasy when I was a kid. That's what I was talking about. And it's a lot of us have it when we're in situations that we want to escape from, but we can't. So I would fantasize that I was a famous rock star. I was like Elvis on stage, and it was girls screaming for me, adoring me, and there was guys jealous of me. And that's kind of a career that I created. I ended up on stage, so to speak. I would travel around the country. So I did the physical therapy for a while, and then I figured, I could make a lot more money speaking, and eventually segued over into speaking. Like 90% of the time, I still did some part-time physical therapy work, and I loved it and I didn't love it. Meaning when I was on stage and I connected and people looked at me, I got that adoration, that admiration, that love that I didn't get as a child. Now, this is all unconscious. I don't know that this is going on. And I just want more and more and more. I guess, Dave, it's like a classic, we read about these public figures that get more and more power, notoriety, or fame, and then they crash and burn. They do something. They become addicted. They cheat on their spouse. They hurt someone, and they're like, my God, they had everything. Why would they do that? Well, I get it. I spoke at Goldman Sachs in 2008, right before the financial implosion. And I was at the top of my game. They paid me a lot of money to do 3 one-hour seminars once a week for 3 weeks. And I was like, oh my God, the sky's the limit. But I would get off stage after all this admiration and applause, and I would feel terrible. I would have this like come down where I felt I couldn't verbalize it. I can verbalize it now after this work. I felt shame. I felt very vulnerable. I felt like, why did I go out and do that? Why did I say those things about myself? And why did I think people were going to like that? It's almost, I liken it, Dave, to like, remember you're back in college and you drink too much and you say some really stupid things to a girl. And then you wake up the next morning, you remember like, oh man, why did I say that? I'm so embarrassed, whatever alcohol's the truth serum sometimes. Dave, that's how I felt after these seminars, and I didn't understand it. And
like an imposter almost.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Imposter syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
And something called critical inner parent. Again, the more terminology, you're like me. I know you and I had this conversation. We just love to learn, man. We just love to learn. And I love what you shared with me last time about the path that you've been on. So I realized I have this critical inner parent now. Back then, I didn't know what it was. So I wanted to numb myself. And how do you numb yourself? Most people numb themselves with food, alcohol, drugs, binge watching TV, social media, binging, poor relationships, promiscuity, cheating, all that stuff. That's not a judgment on anyone. When I see someone doing that, Dave, I know you know this, that's someone trying to fill a hole. That hole probably came from childhood. And it didn't have to be a childhood that the trauma was obvious. Like mine was obvious, and I was still unconscious of it because my brother, sister, and I were like, well, yeah, we had a weird childhood, but everyone does. It's okay. My brother, I remember him just saying, everyone's got something in their childhood, but ours wasn't any worse than anyone else's. Mm. And I have friends who were raised with both parents home, upper middle class, really not wanting for anything, living in a nice home in a nice community, that feel exactly the same way that I do. Never were beaten, never were verbally abused, but somehow were shamed or abandoned by their parents. And we end up at the same place. So after all those journeys, speaking at Goldman Sachs and reaching the top of my career, traveling around the country, speaking to the 3rd largest law firm in the world, they flew me around the world to speak to their employees. I felt worse, and I hit a bottom. What's called hitting bottom. That if you're in this world, you've heard of that before, where you just don't know what you're going to do. Something's terribly wrong. You have no idea what it is. And you can feel like you're going to go insane. And that's when I found a therapist. That's when the therapist referred me to a 12-step program. Through the 12-step program, I learned to journal, and through the journaling came my memoir. Never intended to write a memoir. My daughter actually said, Dad, why don't you write a memoir, your story? When I started sharing my past, my kids knew nothing about my childhood. Mm-hmm. Didn't know anything about my dad. They thought he died of cancer because my wife said, you can't tell them that stuff. It's a crazy story, the way he died. So you never know what's possible. So now here I am again, trying to rebuild this speaking business, but trying to do it on a solid foundation. I know that sounds cliche, but doing it from a place where it's unshakable, meaning no matter what someone says to me, whether they hire me, pay me, or don't pay me, or say it was good or not good, I want that foundation to be so strong and solid that I can go back and say, well, I did the best I could. This is my path. And I do believe in a higher power now. I do believe that my path, I've been called a healer by some people, and just two friends of mine this week called me a healer. And I just felt uncomfortable with it, Dave. I don't know if your patients over the years have said that to you or how you feel about it. I'd love to hear your perspective.
But we,
But
we always say that we almost like we try not to take much credit for it. So it's a matter of that the body heals itself. We're just kind of a part of the process. But I've had patients get in my face when I've blown that off. I had a patient one time, and I'm in a rush because we're busy. I'm going from table to table, and one of my patients said to me, my son was going to get ear surgery last year, and he didn't get that because he's coming here. And I was like, well, I'm not God. I just power of the body heals the body. I just put things back supposed to be, and the body heals itself. She's about a 4'4" Polish woman. She got right in my face. She goes, "No, you listen to me. He was going to get surgery, and now he didn't because he came here." And she made me acknowledge it. I go, okay. And I think that sometimes, like you and I, you don't want to take the credit. It's uncomfortable, but the reality, it is important sometimes to acknowledge how people feel on how we help them. So I can relate to that too.
I hear you, brother. I get that. And I've had those patients too. And for me, I know part of it is when someone pays me a compliment like that, I know because of my past, my default is to demur and say, no, it's nothing. Part of it is because I don't feel worthy of the compliment. The other part of it is I don't know about that term healer. For some reason, it just doesn't resonate with me personally. I think there are healers, but what I feel more like now, if I think about it, is like a conduit or a connector between a person where they are now, and you could say to God, or to their path, or to their purpose, or to their enlightenment, or to their connection with meaning. What I've seen over these past 4 years through the work that I've done and writing the memoir and looking, the memoir gave me a great gift, a look into the rooms at the exact moments my parents put their worst qualities on me. And that's not a judgment. It's just an observation. They did the best that they could. And now what I can do when I speak to people one-on-one, if we get on that deep level, they let themselves get vulnerable. They see that I'm vulnerable, and it's a safe space. They can start revealing, and they could be, this, Dave, they could be people that look incredibly successful, got it all together like I did. When people look at me like, damn, I wish I was you, bro. You can speak in public, you can talk to anyone. You have so much confidence. You make so much money, which wasn't the case. It's just all perception and facade. But I could connect with another human being now and say, I understand your suffering. I haven't had the exact same issue that you had, but this is what I had. This is what helped me. And I feel like that's now someone saying to them who they admire, who say, I think, well, Peter seems like a decent guy and he's really smart, and whatever else they think about me, and he's really authentic, and he feels the way I do. So if there's hope for him, maybe there's hope for me. And then they start down their own path and journey, wherever that is, whether it's a therapist, a 12-step program, a book, a seminar, whatever. That's my passion now. I want to build my audience up with loyal fans, I'll say, like this, of just people who are looking for an authentic experience or understanding or connection with other human beings, especially on the other side of the past couple of years that we've had that have been so challenging.
Man, I'm so happy to ask that question. Like, what got you like this arc to get you here? Because I know it's everything that you're doing to help others. So when you say being authentic, or just being your authentic self, we're talking about aches and pains and weight loss. When it comes to fitness and nutrition on the surface level, how people think, we know that's different. You've actually taken your life, you've evaluated what was going on with your life all the way through. And like, some people might want to lose weight, but they don't become a master's in nutrition. Some people might want to kind of learn how to get physically better, but they don't become a physical therapist, right? So like, you've committed on a level to help yourself. And really the big lesson is, a lot of that, we talk about, we we get these contradicting philosophies from other people, right? From our mothers, fathers, teachers, preachers, right? They tell us things and we adopt those thought processes, like, and then we start to get levels of success and we're like, oh, you can't. We hear that voice in our head. You can't do that. Who do you think you are? Like, who do you think you are that you're on TV and you're in front of golden? Like, who do you like? If anybody ever knew, right? So that's that voices, right? That we have to get rid of. And I'm bringing this up. You and I are talking to a lot of people who I know could identify to this, and I know that you've taken, when you started this career in physical therapy and nutrition to help people lose weight and help them feel better and rehab their problems. Very noble cause, help a lot of people. And I know that you did, but the missing piece was, how did they get there? Like, how did they lose? Why are they, is it a matter of they don't, like, you don't know you're supposed to eat, you're not supposed to eat McDonald's? Everybody knows that that's not good for you. But the thing is, why do people compromise themselves? Maybe it's low self-esteem, maybe it's the issues they have in their life, and say yes to things that are negative, that'll be destructive, whether it be destructive behavior patterns, whether it's drinking, alcohol, sex, whatever it might be, food choices, whether they take care of their body at all, whether they feel worth it, right? So we can identify your story to having those low self-esteem for one reason or another, and then having to go through it. And we know what has helped us, and we're by no means am I anywhere near where I need to be, where I want to be, but I'm sure happy I'm not where I was, right? And what we can do with that, and what you're doing with that, which I love, and I want to get into that now, is you're taking that, you're doing an inside out approach to someone's health. And you're talking about the issues, because nothing worse than doing everything you say on a physical, nutritional level, having a body of an Adonis, right? And a physical energy level of great, and still feeling like they don't deserve to be here. And if we can work on that inside out, everything else follows. So, so I love what you're doing, and I just so could I identify to why you're so excited about this new chapter, and why you've created this foundation to move forward with your podcast and this new book that's coming out. So, and you're doing coaching with people, and you're doing it virtually for anybody out there. We'll leave those links below, but tell us what you're doing right now, and your vision of how you're going to be helping people, how you're doing that right now, and what that looks like going forward.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks for that validation. I appreciate it. I love talking to you, man, because I feel like we're kindred spirits, and that could sound corny and cliche, but you know what I'm talking about. When you connect to another human being and you're talking authentically, I always get emotional when this happens, and I'm getting emotional now. So I know I'm in the right place with you. So I got those degrees, and I thought that, man, I've got so much knowledge. I can change someone's life. And I know you know this, because I know chiropractors have a really solid nutrition background as well. They get it. They know about healing. I thought, man, if I go out there and just give someone this great diet and this great workout, all they have to do is follow it, and they will look and feel great. Like, it's going to happen. And simple things, right? Like, don't eat McDonald's. Of course, it's so simple. And the way we're talking about eating healthy is not complicated. You eat mostly plant-based. You eat really good quality animal protein. You keep your food local, seasonal, organic when possible, financially, if that's okay with you. So for years, I did that, and I really believed it. And I practiced what I preached. I really have to say, I've met other health professionals that preach something, and then behind closed doors, they do something else. I'm not judging them. I'm just saying I really walked my talk, and I was comfortable talking about all this because I did it. And so for years, I gave people, I would do a huge seminar, and then I would get private coaching clients, and I would say, here's how you do it, man. It's not that hard. And they would do it for a week, a month, 6 months, and then it would almost always stop. That same 95% that starts a diet or an exercise program and quits. And I was like, what is going on? Like, we can't all be weak-willed. I just did a presentation on Monday for a local school district, 120 teachers in an auditorium. And I said, raise your hand if you ever were on a diet. And it's the same number always, 90% raised their hand. I said, raise your hand if you've lost weight on a diet. Same number, 90%. And now raise your hand if you gain that weight back and more. Same 90%. Now, these are teachers. They've gone through rigorous testing, certifications, degrees. Someone put them in charge of kids. Someone said, you're competent enough to be in charge of kids. And so they're teaching, and then comes time for the break. They go to the break room. There's a donut there, and they lose all self-control, and they eat the donut. What the hell is going on? That I became fascinated by that, Dave. So I started looking at psychology. What motivates human beings? That's when I started studying Tony Robbins and Brian Tracy, recently like Joe Dispenza, and then even like enlightening work like Eckhart Tolle. And I got some answers. I went to Tony Robbins. I love Tony Robbins stuff. He taught me basics, goal setting and mindset, stuff my parents never taught me. He had no clue about. But there was something still missing, because even me, I came back from those seminars pumped, man. Like after the Tony Robbins seminars, that's when I wrote my first book. That's when I started my coaching business. That's when I went out and started doing these big speaking gigs. But again, like I said, I ended up back in the same place. Like water always seeks its level, I say. What was going on for me? What was going on for my clients? So I know this, you know this. The reason someone can't lose weight doesn't have to do with the food. Like objectively, it does, meaning if they eat a certain way, they're going to lose weight. But the fact that they can't eat this certain way is so deep that most of us are not conscious of the reasons, the triggers that come up. You said about not being good enough. That comes up for a lot of people, consciously and unconsciously. So here you are, you're my client. I prescribe you a diet and a workout. You do it for a little while and you stop. And I ask you why. You're like, oh, I just got too busy. But if that's everyone's excuse. I got too busy. I got distracted, whatever other excuse you come up with. But if you dig deeper, and if that person is open to looking at that, a lot of it does come down to what you mentioned, low self-worth. And now, so I figured that out at least. And then I hit my bottom. And then I got into this deeper work of this past 4 years, saved my life, really, literally saved my life. And now I understand where that low self-worth for most of us comes from. It comes from childhood. And again, for me, and I was unconscious of it. And it was obvious. My childhood trauma was obvious. And I was still unconscious. But then when I started to look at it, now imagine someone that doesn't have that obvious trauma, how unconscious might they be of what's going on for them? So for me, it was literally moments of my father saying to me, you're stupid, you're lazy, you're not good enough. I was a second born son in a Greek family. Traditional Greek families, the firstborn son is God. He's like Zeus. He gets everything. And I didn't realize this. We were Americans. My parents were off the boat from Greece. We never spoke about this. But recently, sharing my memoir excerpts with my brother and talking about low self-worth, he shared for me the first time. He goes, yeah, my brother was the firstborn son. Daddy would pull me aside and say, you're my favorite. You're the firstborn. You can do anything you want. My father never said that to me. And this is not sour grapes. This is not resentment. This is factual. This is just what happened. He never said, you're good enough. I don't think he ever said, I love you. He showed us love demonstrably. He hugged us insane. My mother didn't touch us. My father hugged us, but neither of our parents said, I love you. But I felt love from him. But he never said, you're good enough. I love you just the way you are. You're an awesome kid. I love the way you do this. All the things that you and I'm assuming you say to your kids that I say to my kids today, that I couldn't imagine not saying that. My kids does something well, I want to compliment them. And I also want to just say to you, driving down the street, hey man, I love you. I'm glad that we can hang out together. And that's just something I never heard as a kid. So I grew up with low self-worth. How does a kid deal with low self-worth? And this again is a survival technique. They probably are not aware of it, like I wasn't. You become perfectionist. That's one of the ways, because when you're a perfectionist, you do things well. When you do things well, people admire you. When people admire you, they can love you. And so all I was looking for, Dave, was my father's love that I never felt from him. And so what did I do? I went and got degrees, and I created a speaking career. I created a fitness product. I wrote books. I made a fitness DVD. I got on QVC and Fox and did all this stuff. And it was never enough because nothing could replace my father's love. So I call it a hole, and that hole is unfillable. And my 12-step program says the hole is unfillable. The amount of food, drugs, alcohol, sex, gambling, addiction, whatever, will never fill that hole. For me, what I found, the only thing that could fill the hole where my father's love should have been was to become my own loving parent. And I learned that through this 12-step program. It's one of the only 12-step programs, as far as I understand, that looks at childhood dysfunction as a generational issue. From what I understand, and I've never been in another 12-step program, I have close friends who are, those programs look just at the individual and your behaviors and how to change your behaviors, why you're faulty, and how to change that. What I think they're missing is going straight to the core. Imagine if someone's trying to lose weight and went on a diet and can't stick to a diet, can find out the exact moment when someone put into them that self-doubt that now manifests as not being good enough to lose weight. It's a little complicated, and it's a little, I don't know, it might be much for some people to buy, but for those of you who've struggled like this and that you've tried, maybe you've even tried therapy and you've tried self-help books and you've gone to Tony Robbins like me, and you've tried meditation and you've tried religion and spirituality and retreats, and it still doesn't work. What I want to share, Dave, with the world is there's nothing wrong with you. There's probably something from your past that you may or may not be aware of. And if you could just uncover that, then you're going to be on that path to taking care of yourself, eating healthy, exercising, getting your adjustments, seeing an acupuncturist, meditating on a regular basis, sleeping well, quitting smoking, whatever it is. And that's, for me, it just makes so much sense for someone to do that, because I could see it working for my friends who I've shared this with. I've had friends for 30 years like you that I reconnected with through reunions, that we have these conversations and they just start to open up. The facade comes down, like, yeah, I'm fine, everything's cool, I'm successful, yeah, nothing bothers me, like I was. And all of a sudden they're like, yeah, dude, I feel exactly the same way. What's going on?
So, it's interesting how what I love about that is we're talking about sustainable results, right? We're not just talking about the quick fix, but the sustainable results. But what it requires is it's an inside out gig, right? It's an inside out issue. It's not an outside in thing. It's not the next diet, the next workout, the next whatever supplement, right? But it's literally an inside out deal. So as simple as that sounds, the hard part is being vulnerable and exploring that, because let's face it, there's a reason it's buried deep. You don't want to feel that again, and consciously or subconsciously, we're avoiding that pain. But quite honestly, the pain of not dealing with it is far worse, right? So imagine being able to remove the cause. So in our last few minutes, right, let's talk about how you do that. You work with people, you're using what's gotten you here to help others with your coaching program, your podcast. So just tell us what that looks like. Tell for those people out there that want to take that next step. It might be a little scary, but we say, be afraid, it's okay, but just take that one step anyway. So how could we encourage people out there to connect with you and have these deeper conversations? Tell me how you're set up right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I started doing when I was going through this work, because I felt compelled to, as I wrote my memoir, I broke every literary rule, by the way. I started sharing excerpts on Facebook as I wrote them. I would edit them and then just publish them. Every agent says, do not publish your work before it's done. But we're entrepreneurs, Dave, right? We don't always follow rules. We just do what our heart tells us and what our gut tells us. So people, friends, strangers started messaging me privately saying, I feel the exact same way. We had different childhoods. Can we talk? Over the past 4 years, I've made so many deep, authentic friendships. And then I started hosting these friends and family parties. And it's 10 people. I wish it was bigger, man, but you can't scale something like this. It's got to be intimate. And these parties are about serving nourishing food and having nourishing talk, whatever comes up. There's no agenda, but usually we get deep and we start talking about this stuff, like what's really affecting all of us. So the way to connect with me is just send me an email, send me a message on social media. I love talking about this stuff because the more people I connect to, the more I get validated. And validation is different than admiration. Validation is you're on the right path. I believe God sends people and signs to me to help me on my path, because the path is really, really tough. You probably know this, Dave. When you are walking an authentic path, it could be brutal. I'll give you an example. I recently spoke, and I just recently started weaving in the childhood trauma, stress, and anxiety with the nutritional, motivational exercise piece that I used to do traditionally. So it's new for me, and it's a little clunky and awkward. I'm kind of all over the place sometimes, but I love it. And I feel like I can't talk to people about nutrition and exercise without talking to them about what you said, inside out. We got to talk about the inside, because the out, we're not going to get anywhere. We're going to end up in the same place. So I spoke recently. I came home. People came up to me and said, "Hey, that was good. Thanks so much." A couple of people shared some really personal stuff with me. But then I came home, and that critical inner parent that we talked about before, that self-doubt, that voice, when we're traumatized as children, or not accepted or shamed or abandoned, we assume that voice. It becomes the critical inner parent for us. And that's the voice that says you're not good enough, you're not fast enough, you're not rich enough, you're lazy, you're fat, you're ugly, you're stupid, all that stuff. Who do you think you are kind of stuff, the stuff that you talked about before. So I came home after doing this, fulfilling one of my visions, and I felt terrible. I was like, what did you say? That shame, humiliation, embarrassment, all started coming to the surface. That was my critical inner parent. I had a terrible, terrible night. I had nightmares, or bad dreams, I should say. And I woke up the next morning and really reflected. Like, what the hell's going on? I thought I was doing God. I thought I was doing my purpose, my path. What's going on? And I was at the gym. I don't know if it was this morning or the morning after. And the gym is the great place, right, Dave? All those endorphins are being released. You're like euphoric. You're empowered, and stuff comes to me all the time when I'm exercising. And it came to me. God wants me to experience the lessons that I'm going to share with my audience. He wanted me to do a podcast now about the critical inner parent, and how you could be doing something you love, that you worked for, and you could feel like crap about it, because that critical inner parent is just going to hold you back. It's a protective mechanism, but it holds you back from living your life. And if you listen to it, you won't get back on that horse. You won't continue with that diet. You won't continue with your chiropractic adjustments. You won't continue with your meditation practice, because that voice, it could be so loud. So I'm answering two things at once now. But the way, what I want is to talk to people, whether it's one-on-one or an audience. I want to share this stuff, and it's not doom and gloom. It's encouraging. It's awesome. Like, being healthy is not that hard. You look at the healthiest people in the world. They're all poor, live in rural areas. They have no technology. They have no coaches. They're just living a very pure, simple life, eating natural food, walking everywhere, making their own bread, carrying water, gardening, raising animals, whatever. It's not that complicated. So if anyone out there wants to connect and offer a program to your people, your employees, your group, your organization, whatever it is, whether it's live or virtual, that's what I absolutely love doing. I love telling people, if you don't have what you want in your life, there's nothing wrong with you. And if you've tried a lot of things, that's okay. There's probably something you haven't tried. And that's, like you said, Dave, going internal, going here, That's where anxiety is, right? Stress is external. It's something that happens to us. The guy cuts us off on the highway. It's finances. It's a boss. Anxiety is here. It's internal. It's how we interpret what's happening in the outer world. Once you start looking at that stuff, you're just going to make progress because you're going to get to the bottom of things. So long story short, the way for people to connect with me is to listen to my podcast. If they want, there's excerpts of my memoir on my website. I'm sure you'll give that link to that. And then to connect with me, stay connected to me. I really feel like these long-term sustainable relationships are where we heal. It's not the one-off speaking in a big auditorium to 5,000 people and never see them again. It's the human connection, interaction on the other side of that.
Wow. This was a powerful conversation. I'm so happy that we went where we went. This community really appreciates that, I know for sure, because we want results. And we love being transparent and we love being real. So, and I wouldn't be surprised I have you back in some way, shape, or form. It would be great to have you back. So I hate to put you on the spot, but I'm gonna have to ask you to come back.
No, I'd love to, Dave. I'd love to. I love this conversation. Thank you for letting me share this. It means a lot to me.
So below in the links, besides subscribing and hitting the bell and making sure you don't miss another episode, smash that thing. And then besides that, below we have the podcast. You've got your book out. It's going to be coming out soon, Waking the Fire. The podcast is called Waking the Fire. That link is below. Your speaking link is below, as well as your life and health coaching is below. Is that the website you mentioned with the excerpts? Yeah. Cool. Excerpts are in the health and lifestyle coaching.
It's all
website. There. This is awesome. You know, we can talk forever. And I have to, and I know you don't live too far. And I knew half the people in the picture at the last dinner. So I'm inviting myself over for the next one.
Dave, let's plan one together. Serious, brother. I have some people, some professional contacts and friends that want to co-host, and I love doing that. Just meeting new people. So let's definitely talk about that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here, being part of our community today. Look forward to having you back. And again, I really appreciate you being here. So thank you.
Thanks, brother.
Have a great day.
You too.